Tonight in Toronto, this was no kids' game. The lines were drawn for the battles of October, filled with unforgettable World Series moments. Funny thing about baseball, just when you start to taste victory, there's always somebody else who cleans your plate. And you talk about hungry. In the bottom of the ninth, this battle was settled. And the Atlanta Braves found themselves away from home in a dome, down 2-1. The good news? Guess who's coming to dinner tonight? Well, take a look around this city, and about all you see are smiles. Toronto's Blue Jays are up 2-1 in the World Series, and suddenly the good folks north of the border have let 15 years of frustration fade into dreams of the future. Their heroes are also dreaming, but they know that there is still work to be done, lots of it. Tom Glavine, who starts for the Braves, probably hasn't had much time to dream, and pitching on 3 days rest, he must reprise his Game 1 performance in order to even this series one more time. So come on in and welcome once again to Skydome, where the roof may be closed, but the proud fans have taken the lid off their enthusiasm. And hi again, everybody. I'm Pat O'Brien. Welcome to our CBS Sports continuing coverage of the 1992 World Series. And you know, maybe this is why they call it the Fall Classic. 5 of the last 8 World Series games have been determined on the final pitch. And my partner tonight, for some reason, is wearing a Bugs Bunny tie. Kitty Cott, I must say, what's up, Doc?
Well, what's up? The Atlanta Braves hope that Jimmy Key's pitches are up. Obviously, it's a critical game for Atlanta. And what a team normally has to do when you come off a tough loss like the Braves had last night are establish things in the early going. Tom Glavine, I think, has to shut the Toronto batting order down early, and I think the Braves have to find a way to generate some runs against Jimmy Key. I think that's key for them tonight.
And pull a rabbit out of their caps, okay. Maybe. Tonight it will be Tom Glavine for Atlanta, and for Toronto, a fresh face in this World Series and a very fresh arm. Jimmy Key, who was the Blue Jays' hottest pitcher in September. And while Glavine will go on 3 days rest, Key is a veritable Rip Van Winkle. He's enjoyed 16 days of rest. And what about that?
Well, the 3 days rest for Tom Glavine, I laugh at that a little bit. The only factor is the fatigue in the legs. If you're coming back on 3 days rest, your legs might get a little bit tired. That means late in the game you don't drive toward the hitter as well, and you leave the ball up. But usually you have much better touch and feel, and I would expect to see Tom Glavine go with that same low and away pattern that he did in Game 1. Jimmy Key, on the other hand, I think mentally you go to the mound and overcome the fact that you haven't pitched much in the last month. Don't lean on that for an excuse. Assume you're going to hit Pat Border's glove and throw the ball low and away. The danger is with a lot of rest, you tend to leave too many balls up in the strike zone early, and that could be a problem for him tonight.
Kitty, after 3 games, one of the trends emerging is the inability of the Braves to hit and drive in runs. Atlanta's team batting average is under 200 with only 2 extra base hits. The meat of the Braves order, Terry Pendleton, David Justice, and Sid Bream, have only 2 RBIs among them.
Yeah, and that's pretty easy to figure out. It's the Toronto pitching staff. There's nothing wrong with those hitters, but when you run into Juan Guzman in a perfect Toronto bullpen, hitters that are good hitters during the season become average hitters in postseason play because you're always seeing outstanding pitching.
You know, with so much at stake, sometimes You just got to make things happen on your own. And so now that they're down 2-1, a couple of Braves have decided to retool. Yesterday, Pendleton and Bream placed rush orders for new sticks they hope will give them some added chop at the plate. And if they aim to even this series, they'll definitely need a couple of those smoking bats to get hot real soon, like tonight. The bats arrived here today at noon after clearing customs. And when we come back, Jim Kaat and Tim McCarver, our own World Series battery, will show us how the Blue Jays jump-started their motors in that exciting 9th inning last night as Baseball 92 rolls on from north of the border to the deep south here on CBS.
CBS Sports coverage of Game 4 of the 1992.
Welcome back to Skydome. You know, every Blue Jays fan knows how impressive this remarkable facility is, but tonight they also seem to have quiet confidence in their home team that plays here. And they're going up against Tom Glavine, who is the only pitcher in this series who has pitched a complete game in this World Series. And I talked to him this morning, pretty loose today, and he said he's ready to try to get the job done tonight for his Atlanta Braves. A lot of wheels were turning last night in that 9th inning, and we turn to our strategy masters, Jim Kaat and Tim McCarver, to put their tight spin on how the Jays made the big plays.
Pat, I think last night's bottom of the 9th inning will be etched in baseball fans' minds for a long, long time to come. Roberto Alomar, the human starting kit, opens things up in the 9th inning, and that runs the starter, Steve Avery.
Yeah, and I think it really opened things up because the key at bat for me was Joe Carter's at bat coming in against Mark Wohlers. You have scouting reports on teams, and sometimes I think managers let those take over for their instincts. Roberto Alomar on first base be an example. Why would you pitch out on the first pitch with a pitcher like Mark Wohlers who doesn't have exceptional control? Why? Because Alomar steals early in the count, but he didn't. He waited till it was 2-0, then he stole second, then Carter walks, and to me the inning began to unravel right there.
Everybody knew that Joe Carter wasn't going to bunt. He had only sacrificed once all year, but so had Dave Winfield. Did that surprise you at all?
Well, I know that Winfield has bunted before, not often, but I also know he takes a lot of pride in being able to do things like that. And you knew that Cito Gaston at that point was going to do whatever it took to get those runners over. And I don't know if it was surprising, but it was impressive to see a power hitter like Winfield perfectly executed bunt.
But the most interesting thing in the inning for me was Cito Gaston pinch hitting for John Olerud. That was the first meaningful pinch hit for John Olerud all year long. He'd been pinch hit for 3 times, but all of them were meaningless. And he comes up with the hero of Game 2, Ed Sprague.
It tells you what World Series play will do to managers' decisions. Cito Gaston will sit there and tell you, I'll never pinch hit for John Olerud because he hits left-handers rather well. But you watch Mike Stanton one night and see how he handles left-hand hitters, and you change your mind. And there comes the intentional walk into play, and that's an interesting play because percentage-wise, there are a lot of managers that will show you results where 80% of the time, when you put a man on with the intentional walk, it'll backfire. Last night it happened twice, Justice and Sprague. Both times it resulted in runs.
I mean, here's a guy, Mike Stanton, who's one of the hottest pitchers in postseason play. And last year overpowering the Minnesota Twins. He's been effective this year, and he was used to intentionally walk a hitter. That's a little strange to me.
Yeah, I think managers, and once again, baseball is a slow-paced game, but you make your decisions quickly. And I think Atlanta got caught in a position where Jeff Reardon was not in a favorable position to succeed. It's much easier to hit a fly ball off Jeff Reardon at this stage of his career, and I don't think that was a good matchup for Atlanta. Candy Maldonado against Jeff Reardon.
Talked to Bobby Cox, and I asked him about Jeff Reardon. I said, will last night's performance, Sunday night's performance, affect his future in the World Series? And he said, maybe.
I think that's a case where maybe the previous 2 will affect the third choice.
What do you think, Patrick?
Timmy, I think you guys look pretty darn comfortable talking baseball down there in the dugout. And who knows what twists and turns will be woven into tonight's plot. Stay tuned. Baseball 92 will continue live from Skydome in a moment. Stay with us. Went back to the wall to haul in this David Justice blast with 2 runners on in the 4th inning last night. Shades of the 1954 World Series when Willie Mays made his amazing catch of a Vic Wertz blast. Say hey. We'll be back after this word from your local station. Stay with us. Welcome back to Baseball 92. You know, the people of Canada have shown a great love for baseball and have been outstanding hosts to all of us here. We hope that last night's essay by satirist Bill Geist was taken in the good-natured spirit in which it was intended. That is our hope here at CBS. And now it's time to honor two friendly neighbors, the United States and Canada. And here is Sky Dome public address announcer Murray Eldon.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Curb MCA recording artist Winona Judd as she performs the American National Anthem. Winona is accompanied by the U.S. Marine Color Guard and the Royal Canadian Mounted Police Color Guard.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleam, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streamed, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
To sing the Canadian National Anthem, a native of Ontario whose latest release, Now and Then, has received gold status. Please welcome Michelle Wright.
Our home and native land, true patriot love, in all our sons' command, with glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true North strong and free, from far and wide, oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh
And on deck, Game 4 of the 1992 World Series, the Braves and the Blue Jays, here on CBS. Welcome back to Sky Dome. You know, you talk about how big this game is. Ontario's premier, Bob Ray, reportedly made a friendly wager with his counterpart in Georgia, Governor Zell Miller, that if the Blue Jays have to go back to Atlanta for a Game 6, he'll give him the CN Tower. If not, Atlanta will give Toronto the 1996 Olympic Games. We think he was kidding. Getting ready now for Game 4. Let's send it on up to Tim and Sean in the booth. Gentlemen.
Thank you, Pat. Maybe somebody can give Pat O'Brien a chair as well as he gets ready for Game 4 of the World Series tonight, with Toronto leading 2-1 after 3 terrific ball games. As a matter of fact, neither team has led in this series by more than 2 runs at any time. Atlanta's only win came at home in Game 1. Damon Berryhill's 3-run homer in the 6th inning off Jack Morris gave the Braves a 3-1 victory. Another unlikely hero in Game 2, Ed Sprague hit a pinch-hit 2-run homer in the 9th off Jeff Reardon as Toronto took it 5-4. Then last night in the first World Series game ever outside the United States, Candy Maldonado's bases-loaded single in the bottom of the 9th off Reardon gave the Jays a 3-2 win. So tonight it is on to Game 4 with 2 left-handers on the mound, and that means Toronto will use the same lineup it used to win last night, while Bobby Cox goes to what he calls his all right-handed hitting lineup.
Yeah, and 8 of the 9 are right-handed hitters. David Justice is the only left-handed batter in the lineup for the Atlanta Braves, but his lifetime average against left-handed pitching is .301. John Olerud, the only other left-hander in the lineup, he's batting 5th or 6th for the Toronto Blue Jays, and he also has a very, very good batting average for his lifetime against left-handed pitching.
We heard Jim Cott on the pregame show talk about the similarity between these 2 starting pitchers, Tom Glavine of Atlanta and Jimmy Key of the Toronto Blue Jays. It's hard to hear yourself here in Sky Dome as they take the field. But what about the approach to batting against these fellas?
Well, the one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to pull the left-hander if you're a right-handed batter. The one thing you try to do is keep your front shoulder in there and try to hit the ball back through the box. Players have a saying for that. They say we try to hit it back through the originator. The one thing you don't want to do, as we said, is try to pull either left-handed pitcher because their strength is low and away. Because if you try to pull them, you're going to play pepper with the shortstop all night long. That's what right-handed hitters don't want to do, hit the ball to the left side of the infield.
Let's check in with our originator, Jim Cott.
All right, Sean, based on what Tim said, the strike zone could be a very important factor tonight. Because both lefties want to keep the ball down and away, if home plate umpire Dan Morrison's strike zone is not as generous as Jerry Crawford's was in Game 1, Glavine and Key will have to bring the ball up and over the plate a little bit more, and then we may see a high-scoring game. Sean?
Thank you, Jim. The starting lineup tonight for the Atlanta Braves against Jimmy Key. Otis Nixon leads off in center field. Jeff Blauser, the shortstop. Terry Pendleton batting 3rd at 3rd base. The cleanup hitter is DH Lonnie Smith. David Justice, the only left-handed hitter in the lineup, in right field. Ron Gant back in the lineup in left field. Brian Hunter batting 7th at first base. The catcher Damon Berryhill bats 8th. And batting 9th, the second baseman Mark Lemke.
The defense for the Toronto Blue Jays, Candy Maldonado, he had an assist last night. He had 12 during the regular season. He'll be in left field. Devon White with that remarkable catch last night. An almost triple play for the Blue Jays against the Braves. Joe Carter once again in right field this evening. Kelly Gruber will be the 3rd baseman. Manuel Lee at shortstop. Roberto Alomar in that great range at 2nd base. John Olerud at 1st base. And Pat Borders once again behind the plate.
And on the mound making his World Series debut, 31-year-old left-hander Jimmy Key, who finished the regular season at 13-13, but he won each of his last 5 decisions. Key is ready to go, and another sellout crowd is on hand at Sky Dome. They expect nearly 52,000. Otis Nixon leads off. He's a switch hitter. And he's looking to end an 0-for-11 drought since he singled on the first pitch in the first inning in Game 1 off Jack Morris. We're underway. 1 strike on Nixon, who fouled one back to the screen. Otis was a better right-handed hitter during the regular season.
You saw only 22 RBIs for the leadoff batter. What leadoff hitters want to do, score a lot of runs. And from the leadoff position, the Atlanta Braves led the National League this year with 116 runs scored. They also got 200 hits out of that position. Only the Reds and the Expos had 200 hits from their leadoff guys.
The 1-1 pitch is a breaking ball low and in. Jimmy Key is a native of Huntsville, Alabama. And a product of Clemson University. Nixon has his second hit of the series. His first since the first inning of game 1. He slapped one into right, and the Braves have the lead man on. Dan Morrison, as Jim Cott mentioned, in the spotlight as the home plate umpire tonight. Bob Davidson at first, John Shulock at second, Jerry Crawford at third. Mike Riley is along the left field line, and Joe West is in right.
We talked about how to approach Jimmy Key, and you can only tell by the first hitter. Otis Nixon's approach was perfect. Sinker away, and he lined one to right.
Nixon had 41 stolen bases during the regular season, and Key has an excellent pickoff move. It'll be a bit more difficult for the Braves to run tonight against the tandem of Key and Borders.
It'll be a bit more difficult with Bob Davidson at first base. Bob Davidson, more than any other National League umpire, calls a lot of balks.
Affectionately known as Bach and Bob by some in the National League. One strike on Jeff Blauser, who waits as Nixon draws another throw. Otis a perfect 2 for 2 in the World Series in stolen bases. Good move. Out at first is Otis Nixon.
I mean, Otis Nixon is just flat out nailed at first base. You see him lean towards second, back too late to first. Fine move by Jimmy Key.
He was out with room to spare. Now Blauser takes a ball, and it's 1-1. After Otis Nixon was called out by Bob Davidson, Pat Corrales, the first base coach, did speak with the first base umpire about the move. It wasn't a heated protest, but a point was made by Pat Corrales to the first base umpire. There's Pat.
Pat, a former Major League manager. He managed the Philadelphia Phillies and the Cleveland Indians. Also the Texas Rangers.
3 balls and a strike now on Blauser, whose only hit in this series was in game 2. A single. Key, a relatively quick worker, and Blauser singles to center. So again, Tim, we see the approach that you spoke of at the top of the telecast, taking Jimmy Key to the opposite field or up the middle.
And we said it in the pregame comments. See if that ball's on the sweet part of the bat. If you try to pull it, you pull it to the left side of the infield and hit it weakly on the end of the bat. But keeping the left shoulder in there for a right-handed batter is essential to hit Jimmy Key well, or for that matter, Tommy Glavine.
So the pickoff looks even bigger now as Terry Pendleton stands in. He started to find his stroke last night when he went 2 for 4. He's now 3 for 12 in the World Series. Back-to-back hits to start the ball game for Atlanta, but Otis Nixon was picked off. Pendleton showed bunt and took a breaking ball low. Jimmy Williams, the third base coach, threw the signs for Pendleton and Blauser. And a strike. 1-1. Like Otis Nixon, Terry Pendleton, a much better hitter from the right side of the plate. He had .354 right-handed during the regular season, and he's hitting .625 in the postseason from the right. That's 5 for 8 for Pendleton against left-handed pitching in the postseason.
Blauser at first and 1 out. We're in the top of the first inning in Game 4 of the World Series. Blauser with a delayed steal, and the throw did not get him. Well, that was kind of strange. Blauser, fooled by the move, got a very late start. It looked like a hit and run as Pendleton swung through the pitch, but Jeff wound up safe at second nonetheless.
I think he called it right both ways. Really, it looked like a delayed steal and a hit and run. I think what Jeff was thinking, you've got to make sure against a guy like Jimmy Key, you make sure that he doesn't throw to first base. The obligation is on the hitter to put the ball in play. The Braves end up getting a stolen base out of it, however.
You see, Borders didn't realize that Blauser was running. He hesitated before delivering to second. Pendleton hammers one to short. Lee the catch. Throw to second, not in time. And Alomar goes leaping over Blauser. So another ball well struck by the Braves. But Pendleton hit it right at the shortstop Lee, and they had a chance to double off Blauser.
That was a curveball, and the third line drive in a row hit off Jimmy Key. Alomar, who was playing Pendleton straight away, is late on arriving and hurdles Jeff Blauser. Like Edwin Moses on that play. Huh?
Now Lonnie Smith. That 1 for 4 came last night. He singled a drive and a run in the 8th inning. At the time it gave Atlanta a 2-1 lead. Smith in his 60th postseason game. This is the 5th World Series in which he has appeared. 1-1 the count.
And if the Braves can come back and win, Lonnie Smith will be the first player ever to play on 4 world champion teams, different teams. The Phillies in 1980, the Cardinals in 1982, the Kansas City Royals in 1985, and if Atlanta can win it this year, the Braves.
Fastball. Occasionally Key will try to sneak the fastball over the inside part of the plate or off the inside of the plate to keep the hitters honest. That one missed, and it's 2-1. Two outs and a runner at second. No score in the top of the first. Smith checked his swing and took a ball low and away. Jeff Blauser is the runner at second. Now the 3-1 to short. Lee throws him out. After half an inning, the Braves nothing, and the Blue Jays coming up. For the Toronto Blue Jays tonight, Roberto Alomar batting second at second base. Joe Carter is the right fielder. The cleanup hitter DH Dave Winfield. Batting fifth at first base, John Olerud. Batting sixth in left field, Candy Maldonado. The third baseman Kelly Gruber bats seventh. Hitting eighth and doing the catching, Pat Borders, and the shortstop Manuel Lee bats ninth. That is the lineup. The Blue Jays send up against 26-year-old lefty Tom Glavine, who was the winning pitcher for Atlanta in Game 1 as he went the distance.
He pitched a 4-hitter on Saturday, the only complete game of this series, and his only 2 postseason wins have been in the World Series. He is 2-5 in postseason play, a 20-game winner this year.
For the second consecutive year, Devon White digs in. Just 1 for 13 in the World Series. He had an RBI single in Game 2. No scores. The Jays bat for the first time tonight. And White looked at Glavine's first pitch, low and away. And a strike, 1-1.
It'll be interesting to see if the Toronto Blue Jay hitters adjust to Tommy Glavine. And if they do, we'll see if Glavine changes his pattern of Game 1, and that was low and away to right-handers.
Good breaking ball. White questions the call by Dan Morrison. 1 ball and 2 strikes. White made what Dave Winfield calls the greatest catch in World Series history last night.
Jim Cott alluding to the fact that Dan Morrison has a very honest, rigid strike zones, very structured, by the book. No gimmies with Dan Morrison.
Glavine might have had a few gimmies from Jerry Crawford in game 1 as he nibbled at that outside corner. Two-two pitch, fouled out of play. Being aware of Jim Cott's reputation on the golf course, not too many gimmies coming from him either. Now the 2-2. That's an example of a pitch that might have gone Glavine's way in game 1. Instead, it's a full count. That was a great catch by White last night, and it nearly started a triple play, which would have been only the second in World Series history. That's through the middle, and again, the approach to these left-handers. Up the middle or to the opposite field. White used it to come up with just his second hit of the World Series.
The defense for the Atlanta Braves. Ron Gann in left field and Otis Nixon in center. David Justice with a strong arm in right. Terry Pendleton at third base. Jeff Plauser, the shortstop. Mark Lemke at second base. Brian Hunter, the first baseman. And once again, Damon Berryhill behind the plate.
And the batter is Roberto Alomar, who's only 2 for 12 in the series, but he started the 9th inning last night with a single, stole second, and scored the winning run. He turned a bunt, took it back, and looked at a ball. Rich Hacker is the third base coach for the Blue Jays. Devon White has not attempted a stolen base in the World Series. He hasn't been on much.
He had 37 and 41 tries during the regular season. Only Henry Cotto of the Seattle Mariners had a better ratio. But he was caught 4 times in the American League Championship Series. How do you figure? I don't know.
That's amazing. Only thrown out 4 times during the entire regular season and 41 tries. Then he's thrown out 4 times in 6 games against Oakland.
I think one of the reasons, Terry Steinbach.
And the Oakland pitching staff, which Cito Gaston says does the best job of holding runners on of any staff in baseball. Glavine with the slide step. That's a double play ball if they hurry. And no chance, as White was on top of Lemke. 1 out. They erased the lead runner. And it's Alomar at first base with 1 down in the first, no score.
Once again, that's what we were talking about in the opening. White with the ideal approach to Tommy Glavine, and Roberto Alomar with the approach that's going to get you a lot of ABs without any hits. The ground ball to shortstop.
Joe Carter digs in. He's 3 for 10 with 2 solo home runs. One of those at the expense of Tom Glavine in the 4th inning of game 1. It was the only run surrendered by Atlanta that night. Carter pops it up first base side. It will be close. Hunter to the rail without a play. It's 2 rows deep. Tim, the philosophy about which you've been speaking, to go up the middle and go to the opposite field, is it more difficult for these power hitters in the middle of the order like Carter to take on that mindset?
That's an interesting question. I think they do the same thing by taking on that approach to hitting. That doesn't mean you can't pull the ball. If the ball's inside, your hands will react to the inside pitch. You hit the outside pitch and the inside pitch the same way. But you've got to have the right approach, and everything keys off the front shoulder.
Carter waiting for the 0-1 pitch with 1 out and Alomar at first. Robbie 6 for 6 in stolen bases in the postseason. He was heading back to first as Glavine delivered the pitch. Here's Jim Cott.
Sean and Tim, you'll see the apparatus that Robbie Alomar and Devon White wear. I think you'll see a lot more base runners do it in the future. It's the same kind of a guard you'd wear on your wrist if you were doing inline skating or rollerblading. When you slide, it'll give you some protection on the palm. It'll keep you from hyperextending your wrist. High-tech baseball.
Alomar had had much of a chance to employ that guard prior to last night when he stole his first stolen base of the World Series. But it came at the most opportune time for the Jays as they won 3-2 to take a 2-1 lead. He's not running. Carter pulls it slowly to third. Pendleton's only play at first. He intentionally threw it into the turf to speed it up, and Carter is out. Alomar to second with 2 down.
The first infielder that made this throw by design was Davey Concepcion, the shortstop of the Cincinnati Reds. A one-hopper to first base. That, as Sean said, was by design.
And now Dave Winfield. Like Carter, he's 3 for 10 in the series. Winfield does not have a home run. All 3 of his hits singles. He's had 1 hit in each of the first 3 games. No score. The Blue Jays threaten with 2 down in the bottom of the first, and Roberto Alomar at second base. Breaking ball stayed outside. 1-0 on Winfield. Bobby Cox waited a while before naming Tom Glavine the starter for Game 4. He wanted to see how Glavine bounced back after throwing 126 pitches in Game 1. Glavine threw on the side here on the off day at Sky Dome on Monday and threw extremely well, and that erased any doubt that Bobby Cox might have had in his mind. Here is the Atlanta skipper, who was ejected from last night's game by home plate umpire Joe West when he threw a helmet out onto the playing field. Bobby told us before the game, as we suspected last night, he did not mean to throw the helmet onto the field, tried to bounce it off the step, but he missed. Winfield has appeared in 2 World Series, this one in the 1981 World Series while a member of the New York Yankees. He was 1 for 22. Alomar heads to third without a throw. During the regular season, Alomar stole third base 12 times. Only Marquise Grissom of Montreal stole third more often, and he stole third 24 times.
Twice as many as Alomar. Craig Biggio and Luis Polonia also stole third 12 times. It is not often with 2 outs that you steal third without a throw, but Terry Pendleton holding his position.
Winfield up the middle. Lemke from behind the bag throws him out. A nice play to end the inning. The Blue Jays threaten but do not score. After 1 at the Sky Dome, no score.
Major League Baseball will give $5,000 to build and renovate youth baseball fields through the Coca-Cola Homers for America program.
And that falls under the category of some pictures need no commentary. Jimmy Key working to David Justice. In the second, no score in the ball game. Justice, the only left-handed hitting starter in the lineup tonight for Atlanta. He's 2 for 8 in the World Series. Just inside. 1 ball and 1 strike. Justice, Gant, and Hunter for the Braves in the second. Atlanta hit several balls sharply in the first inning with nothing to show for it. The pickoff of Otis Nixon, a very big play. Chop foul, 1-2.
The Blue Jays are not playing Justice as much to pull as they would against a right-handed pitcher. Manuel Lee is on the left side of the infield, and that's because David Justice doesn't pull left-handers like he does right-handers. The gap between Alomar and the second base bag, that's the biggest gap on the infield.
Roberto really a short fielder in this instance.
Short right.
Shallow right. A softball. Jimmy Key, second toughest against left-handed batters in all of Major League Baseball this season. Only Mark Langston fared better among pitchers against left-handed hitters. The 1-2 to Justice. Another well hit ball. This one gloved by Olerud. To Key for the out.
Justice pulling the curveball hard, and Olerud sucks it up. At 3-1 play at one time in baseball about 25 years ago, it was a difficult play to make, but because first basemen and pitchers work so hard on that play in spring training, it's all become rather routine. But there was a time in baseball when it was less so.
Ron Gant, the batter. Gant has not started the last 2 games for Atlanta, in large part because of his hitting woes in the postseason. He's only 4 for 25 in the playoffs and World Series combined. 1 ball and 1 strike on Gant, who is starting in left field tonight. Little fly ball in shallow right. Carter, after a long run, is there. 2 down. We're in the second. The bases are empty. There is no score in Game 4 of the World Series. Now Brian Hunter getting the start tonight at first base against the lefty Key. Brian delivered a sacrifice fly for an RBI in Game 2. Ball 1, low and away.
Hunter awfully strong. 14 home runs and only 238 at bats this year. If Brian could be traded to a team where he could get 500 at bats a year, I think he'd be a 30 home run guy.
12 of his 14 home runs against left-handed pitchers. He saw most of his action against lefties while dividing time with Sid Bream at first base. Against left-handers, 12 homers and 158 at bats. That's 1 every 13 times up. An excellent ratio. The 2-1 pitch is chopped down to third and foul.
It's very difficult to be young and be a platoon player. It's okay if you're Sid Bream, who's on the other end of that platoon, because Sid's been around a long time, starting with the Dodgers, going to Pittsburgh, and now Atlanta. But when you're young and platooned, you get the label that you can't hit right-handers. And I think Brian Hunter could be getting that label.
Hunter's only 24 years old, and he strikes out on the rare high fastball from Jimmy Key. That's the first strikeout of the night for Key. After an inning and a half, there is no score. Another World Series moment from Game 4 in 1947. Cookie Lavagetto's pinch hit 2-run double with 2 outs in the 9th ended Bill Bevan's bid to throw the first no-hitter in World Series history. Gave the Dodgers a 3-2 win to even that series at 2 games each. Game 4 in 1947. This is Game 4 in 1992. Scoreless in the bottom of the second. John Olerud took a breaking ball for a strike. With Olerud at the plate, Jeff Blauser, the shortstop, playing way up the middle and on the edge of the outfield. You can't call it the outfield grass. He's beyond the infield line. As Olerud looks for his first hit of the series, he's 0 for 7 with 3 whiffs. Tom Glavine's 1-1 was just inside, and Jim Cott's scouting report on home plate umpire Dan Morrison has held true to form to this point. He has been not as generous with the strike zone as others we have seen behind the plate in this series. No doubt that was a strike. 2-2 on Olerud. He'll be followed by Candy Maldonado and Kelly Gruber. Chopped foul. Cito Gaston didn't post his lineup as early this afternoon as he has for the first 3 games, and he told us he was pondering whether or not to use Olerud against the lefty Glavine. He had Sprague in mind. And this is the lineup that Gaston has gone with just about all year. and you stick with the winning combination. Olerud strikes out. His difficulties continue. He's 0 for 8 with 4 strikeouts. That's the first strikeout of the night for Glavine.
This looked like the circle change from Tommy Glavine, and there's the circle right there. You could see the index finger and the thumb touching. There aren't too many left-handers who throw a changeup to a left-handed batter, and the reason is it's usually to be effective in that down and in area. But a fine pitch to John Olerud.
Now Candy Maldonado sends it out of play, first base side. Maldonado came up in the bottom of the 9th inning with the bases loaded and 1 out last night, and delivered the single over the head of the drawn-in center fielder Otis Nixon. It brought Alomar in with the winning run. 0-2. And a ball outside. Tonight's game is being produced by Bob Dekas and directed by Bob Fishman. We're at the Sky Dome in Toronto for Game 4 of the World Series, scoreless in the bottom of the 2nd. Fastball just off the inside corner. Glavine wanted it. 2-2.
You rarely see Glavine come inside twice in one at bat to a right-handed batter. I don't think he'll come in there anymore.
He does go back away, and he misses. Chopped off the plate. That could make it a tough play. Blauser able to catch it in the air. That made it an easier play for the second out of the inning.
Well, Kelly Gruber chopped on Sunday night. Roberto Alomar chopped last night to end the game, and now Candy Maldonado does his version of the chop. A high chopper to Blauser. 2 outs.
Interesting to hear what Roberto Alomar said about that with Jim Kahn on the postgame last night. He said if they can chop at us for the entirety of 2 games down there, we can chop back. Kelly Gruber takes the breaking ball for strike 1. He's only 1 for 9 in the series, but the one hit was a big one. The home run last night off Steve Avery that tied the game at 2. Glavine pours in the fastball. Gruber in the hole. 0-2.
Notice Tommy Glavine is changing his pattern a bit. He's coming inside more on right-handed batters. But if he gets in trouble with men on base, you can bet he'll be low and away, or at least try to the right-handers.
Low and away again. Gruber slapped it down to first. Hunter makes the play himself, and the Blue Jays go in order. After 2, no score. A World Series ball game from one of the restaurants in the outfield here at the Sky Dome. That's in straightaway center. That's the Windows Restaurant, just below the rooms in the Sky Dome Hotel that look down to the playing field that have been going for about $1,000 a night for the World Series.
Except for the Blue Jay players, of course. Some of them are residents, full-time residents at the Sky Dome Hotel. Roberto Alomar is one. David Cohn another. There it is.
Those are the hotel rooms above the restaurant. Damon Berryhill, the batter, 1-2 the count. He's just 1 for 11 in the series, but his one hit was the 3-run homer that propelled Atlanta to victory in Game 1. Mark Lemke to follow in the top of the order, and Otis Nixon in the top of the 3rd. No score. Still 1-2. Berryhill has had a tough time making contact in the World Series. He's fanned 7 times, which ties a World Series record for most strikeouts by one player in the first 3 games of the World Series. Cold foul past Jimmy Williams in the third base coach's box. You mentioned Alomar and Cone live in the Sky Dome Hotel during the year, but they don't have the glamorous rooms that look down over the playing field. They have the lower priced rooms that look over the railroad tracks. It's really a decidedly different view.
I understand those rooms.
Pitches in the dirt. Berryhill strikes out again, and Borders a nice throw to get him. Borders had to be very careful not to hit Berryhill with the throw as Damon was running down the line, and the throw was right on the money. 8 strikeouts in the series now for Berryhill.
You know, this is a situation where if Berryhill is running where he should be outside the line, the ball stands a better chance to hit him. He was running inside the line, and had he been running properly outside the line, the ball stood a better chance of hitting him. And had that happened, that would have been okay, and he would have been awarded first base. But it was a fine play by Pat Borders.
Now Mark Lemke up there with a count of 0-1. He's 2 for 10 in the series and 0 for his last 5. Facing Jimmy Key, who has now retired 6 in a row after giving up back-to-back singles to start the ball game. One and 2, the count on Lemke. And Key up and in. Jimmy's looking for his 3rd straight strikeout. He fanned Hunter to end the 2nd, and Berryhill leading off the 3rd. Strike 3. Now another World Series moment from Game 4 in 1941.
Pitcher starting his windup out there again. He's all ready now. Watch it. Here it comes. He swung at the ball and missed it. The ball gets away from the catcher, and Henrich goes to first. The umpire says that Henrich swung. It was a clean strike. The ball got away from the catcher, and so Henrich is entitled to first because he got there ahead of the throw.
The Yankees go on to score 4 in the 9th and win that game 7-4. Take a 3-1 lead in the series against Brooklyn. Somewhat reminiscent of the play involving Borders a moment ago, except this time Borders threw the runner out. Otis Nixon at the plate. A ball and a strike the count. Otis singled to right field for just his 2nd hit of the series as he started the ball game. With Nixon at the plate, Gruber lingers in front of the bag at 3rd. Olerud a half step behind the bag at 1st and close to the line. The 2-1. Popped out of play. 2 balls and 2 strikes.
Otis Nixon is known as Otis Nixon in his hometown of Evergreen, North Carolina. That is the way his father's name is pronounced. His parents, Otis and Gracie, no doubt watching the game, as are all of the folks, all 650 of them in Evergreen, North Carolina.
Watching this World Series Odyssey. Otis pulled it down to 3rd to Gruber, who guns him down. 1, 2, 3. Go the Braves again.
That was good.
Thank you.
I like that.
We'll return to Sky Dome after this word from your local station. I knew you would. Dome, no score as we go to the bottom of the 3rd inning in Game 4. Sean McDonough along with Tim McCarver. You mentioned Evergreen is Otis Nixon's hometown.
And we are going to read this card. Research done by Steve Hurt. He's been talking to the postmaster there, Elise Johnson, who is the postmaster from Evergreen, and we found out that Evergreen has 2 Little League ballparks, 2 gas stations, a post office, a fire department, a school that goes from kindergarten to the 8th grade, a farm supply store, a print shop, and a factory. It's 55 miles south of Fayetteville, North Carolina, where Fort Bragg is, and 60 miles west of Wilmington, North Carolina.
About 650 people live in Evergreen, they tell us. That one's heading for Evergreen. Deep to left field, near the pole, and a home run. Pat Borders puts the Blue Jays on the board with a home run off Tom Glavine. Just fair down the left field line. It's 1-0 Toronto.
Tommy Glavine allowed only 6 home runs during the regular season. In 18 innings, he's allowed 5 home runs in postseason play. And Pat Borders has been sizzling with the bat.
That's his first home run in the World Series. He's now 5 for 10 in this series against Atlanta. He hit a home run in the playoffs as well. Manuel Lee out on the bounding ball to second.
Tommy Glavine was working Borders outside, and he misses. The 1-0 pitch fouled off, and now he tries to come inside. Too much of the plate.
So the Blue Jays have now homered in each of their 10 postseason games this year. Devon White looked at ball 1 outside. The Blue Jays add to their own record. They set the record last night with a home run in their 9th consecutive postseason game. That's within a single postseason. Now they've done it in 10 in a row. And the count is 1-1 on White. Interesting how that can happen. You mentioned the lack of home runs surrendered by Glavine during the regular season, and it's certainly not because he pitches in a ballpark that has a deep fence. They call it the launching pad in Atlanta.
One of the easiest parks in which to hit in all of baseball. 6 home runs in only 225 innings, and here he's worked 18 2/3, and he's given up 5 in postseason play.
Now the 2-2 pitch. Sliced down the right field line. Fair ball toward the corner. It took a strange bounce out of the right field corner. So strange I had trouble describing it. And Devon White has a double. Takes or took, take your pick. It doesn't matter. It's a 2-base hit all the way.
Well, Devon White once again with the proper approach to Tom Glavine. The slicing double down the line, and a fine piece of hitting by Devon White.
So after coming into the ball game 1 for 13 in the World Series, White is 2 for 2 tonight, and in scoring position with 1 out in the bottom of the 3rd. The Blue Jays lead 1-0 on the Borders home run. And Roberto Alomar is the batter. He reached on a fielder's choice. Advanced to second on a ground out, stole 3rd, and was stranded there in the 1st inning. Glavine missed outside with a fastball. Glavine has now surrendered 3 hits. Tommy had retired 6 in a row prior to the home run by Borders. And those numbers a big reason why Alomar had a career high 76 runs batted in this year.
That is a ton for a number 2 hitter too.
Lemke was dancing around the second base bag, and Glavine looked White back into second. The 2-0 pitch. High and away, 3 balls and no strikes with Joe Carter on deck.
very unusual depth in center field. Otis Nixon plays one of the most shallow, or the shallowest, center fields in the major leagues. He has tremendous speed. He and White both have tremendous speed going back on balls, but you don't drop too many in front of either one of them.
And that's ball 4 outside. Alomar walks on 4 pitches. The first walk thrown by Glavine tonight. Glavine did not issue a walk in going 9 innings in game 1. Leo Mazzoni, the pitching coach, on his way to the mound. There is no action in the Atlanta bullpen. One of the few negatives of the Sky Dome from the perspective of fan is that they cannot see into the bullpens from most of the seats here. They are behind the outfield fences. The members of the bullpen sit on raised bleachers so they can see over the outfield fence, and you saw Pete Smith go down the stairs to begin warming up.
From a fan's point of view, you just look down and see who's missing from the bench. And then you decide whether somebody's up and throwing or not for the majority of the fans here.
It is Pete Smith warming up as Joe Carter stands in. Runners at first and second and 1 out. 1-0 Toronto in the 3rd. Carter looks at the 5th straight ball thrown by Glavine. Carter bounced to 3rd his first time up. Devon White, the runner at second. Roberto Alomar at first. Outstanding speed on the bases for the Blue Jays. And a big hack by Carter. He foul tipped it into the mid of Berryhill.
When you put speed on the bases like the Blue Jays have, you get the middle infielders moving all around, and often that opens up the holes for the hitters. You have White, who can run on at second, and Alomar on at first. But look how close Lemke is keeping Devon White.
He was standing right on the bag as the pitch was delivered. That's a double play. Carter lined it right to Blauser. He flipped to Lemke, who had nowhere to go to get to the bag, and that ends the inning. The Blue Jays are on the board on the home run by Borders after 3. 1-0 Toronto.
By AT&T.
The only run in this game, the leadoff home run in the 3rd by Pat Borders of Toronto. Jimmy Key begins the 4th with the first pitch ball to Jeff Blauser. Key allowed hits to the first 2 batters of the night and has allowed nothing since. And the home run by Borders, the only damage done to Tom Glavine. So it's 1-0 Toronto. They're out hitting the visitors 3-2. Blauser singled to center and stole second in the 1st inning. Key's breaking ball was just inside. 2 balls and a strike. Blauser, then Pendleton and Smith, batters 2, 3, and 4, coming up for Atlanta.
The big play in this game so far was the pickoff of Otis Nixon at first base. The Braves had Nixon on at first to lead off the game. He was picked off, and then Jeff Blauser got a hit. Otherwise, it's 1st and 3rd and nobody out. The Braves could have had something going.
And Blauser strikes out. He not noted as a strikeout pitcher, but he has fanned 4 of the last 5 hitters.
I'd say about 70% of swinging strikeouts on balls out of the plate. It's kind of easy to understand. Hitters are trained to hit the ball in the strike zone. But when you're defensive, that's the value of getting ahead. If you're a pitcher, you put the hitter on the defense, and he's apt to go after anything, as Blauser did then.
Terry Pendleton, the batter. That's to right field. Carter. 2 down. Game 5 of the World Series comes your way tomorrow night live from Sky Dome. John Smoltz is scheduled to oppose Jack Morris, a rematch of last year's World Series Game 7. Our coverage on CBS begins at 8 Eastern Time. That's tomorrow night, Game 5 of the 1992 World Series. And there's Jack Morris, who was the losing pitcher in Game 1.
Jack's got his game face on early.
Lonnie Smith, the hitter. Key has retired 10 in a row. It will be 11 when this one comes down. Manuel Lee puts it away. The Braves go quickly in order against Jimmy Key in the fourth. Through 3.5. The Blue Jays won and the Braves nothing. Show Pat O'Brien enjoying the proceedings from the Sky Dome Hotel at center field.
Payback's going to be tough.
Oh,
is it ever going to be tough?
Tune in tomorrow at 8.
Oh, baby.
Why did I do that? Tim put me up to it, Patrick.
Oh, yeah, my fault. Right.
Dave Winfield leads off in the bottom of the fourth. He bounced to second his first time up. The Blue Jays batting with a 1-0 lead against Tom Glavine. Winfield, Olerud, and Maldonado coming up the middle third of the Toronto batting order. Check swing and a ball low and away. Here's Jim Kaat.
Well, you could see Tom Glavine cringe on that pitch, Sean and Tim. That was one he got for a strike in game one. When you've had success against a team as Glavine has in game one, come back 4 days later, thoughts go through your mind. Do I change my pattern or do I wait for them? And it's pretty obvious as you see Devon White and several of the Blue Jays hitters take the ball the other way. You may see Glavine with more inside fastballs, as Tim referred to.
Yeah, you have to change before they do. That's that constant establishing and reestablishing the inside and outside parts of the plate.
Now this, Tim, could be a question for either you or Jim Kaat. We've talked about Dan Morrison, the home plate umpire, an American League umpire. Would Tom Glavine be aware, as he takes the mound tonight, of Morrison's reputation for having that tight strike zone?
If he saw our pregame show, he would, because that's what Jim Kaat said.
Getty, any scouting reports on umpires available to the pitchers when they go out there? And as he ponders the question, Olerud stings one into right field. Winfield stops at second. First and second and nobody out in the fourth inning. Olerud's first hit of the World Series. He's now 1 for 9. Struck out his first time up tonight. That's the fourth hit given up by Glavine. And the batter is Candy Maldonado. Jim, would Glavine be aware of that reputation of Dan Morrison before he took the mound tonight?
Well, I think so. There are pitchers in the American League, Roger Clemens for one, who keep track of umpires and which ones favor the pitcher or the hitter. They're all good umpires, but they all have a distinctive strike zone, some small, some bigger.
Candy Maldonado lifts one to left center, not deep. Ron Gant takes charge for the first out of the inning. Winfield tagged, but does not try to go to third. We're in the fourth. The Blue Jays lead 1-0. Maldonado now 0 for 2.
I remember a game in the 1967 series against the Boston Red Sox. I caught for the Cardinals, and Ed Runge was behind the plate. And he told me, I was catching in the first inning, he said, when you're at the plate, swing the bat. You better be swinging the bat, because he would give pitchers pitches 3-4 inches outside, and he was consistent. The father of Paul Runge, a fine umpire in the National League now.
Kelly Gruber, the batter. He tried to bunt, fouled it back to the backstop.
That's a bad play right there. You see Pete Smith still warming for the Braves. You have a runner in scoring position, 2 runners on, the bottom part of the lineup, albeit Pat Borders, who homered the last time up. But when you have guys in scoring position, that's what it means. And you can't score them when you try to bunt. I think that's a bad play by Kelly Gruber.
Gruber broke an 0 for 23 drought last night with a home run, but perhaps his confidence isn't completely back. And he hits a double play ball. 6-4-3. The Braves turn it to get out of the inning. After 4 at the Sky Dome in Toronto, the Blue Jays won and the Braves nothing.
Various ways that second basemen can protect themselves. One is with the runner bearing down drop down and make the runner get down. And that's what Lemke did on the double play. Nicely turned by Blauser and Lemke.
Jimmy Key working in the 5th inning. David Justice checked his swing and took a ball. Justice, then Gant and Hunter. Batters 5, 6, and 7 in the Atlanta batting order. Justice bounced out to the first baseman Olerud with Key covering in the 2nd. Jimmy Key allowed back-to-back singles to Nixon and Blauser to start the ball game, and the Braves have not had a runner since. And Atlanta's really pretty fortunate, Tim, to be behind by only 1-0 as the Blue Jays, through 4 innings, have left 3 men on base and also hit into 2 double plays.
2 big double plays, you might add, including the one the last inning.
Key's counterpart, Tom Glavine, has had only 1 1-2-3 inning. Key's working on 3 straight 1-2-3 innings. Five career postseason home runs for Justice, but none in this World Series. He hit 2 in the playoffs against Pittsburgh. He's been very patient at the plate. He walked 6 times in the league championship series. And he's walked 4 times already through 3 games plus in the World Series. Big swing and a miss, 4 strike 3. 5 strikeouts for Jimmy Key. He averaged only 4.9 strikeouts per 9 innings this year, so he's well ahead of that pace.
There are some hitters that are characterized as contact hitters. Well, Jimmy Key is a contact pitcher. He puts the ball in play generally, but the Braves having a tough time making contact this evening.
Ron Gant looked at the ball away. He was out on a fly ball to right in the 2nd inning. Fouled off his foot. 1 ball and 1 strike. Key retired the lead man in this inning, Justice on a strikeout, and that's not a surprise. He was the best starter in the American League this season in retiring the first batter in an inning. Leadoff hitters had only a .228 on-base percentage against Jimmy Key. And he walked the leadoff man only 7 times in 224 innings. So he only does that about once every 32 frames. That's on the corner. 2-2 on Gant.
And remember, throughout baseball, a team scores in only 16% of the innings when the leadoff batter is retired. That's how important it is for a guy to get the first guy. If you allow the first guy to get on, that runner scores 51% of the time. A huge jump.
Gant is overdue. 0 for his last 15, including his 0 for 1 tonight. The 3-2 pitch. Lifted to left center field. Room for Devon White. 2 away. This copyrighted telecast is presented by authority of Major League Baseball and may not be reproduced or retransmitted in any form without the express written consent of Major League Baseball. Sean McDonough along with Tim McCarver, Jim Cott, and Pat O'Brien. Happy to have you with us from the Sky Dome in Toronto, where the Blue Jays lead 1-0. Brian Hunter at the plate with 2 down and the bases empty in the Atlanta 5th. Well hit toward the gap. White on the run, and he's there to make the catch. If it stays in the air long enough, he'll get it. Halfway through game 4, Jimmy Key working on the shutout. It's 1-0 Toronto. Welcome back to the Sky Dome, where the hand is for Pat Borders as he stands in to begin the bottom of the 5th. Borders' home run off Tom Glavine, leading off the 3rd, the only run in this ball game. And here's another look at it.
That ball staying on the middle of the plate, and one of the few mistakes that either pitcher has made so far. A lot of times a guy will hit a ball out of the ballpark and a pitcher will come back and say, boy, wasn't that a good pitch? Well, that one from Glavine was not a good pitch, but hitters do hit good pitches out of the park.
Borders out on the bounding ball to short. 1 out in the 5th. With his home run his first time up, Pat Borders has had a hit in each of his last 12 postseason games now. That breaks the record for the longest postseason hitting streak by a catcher, which was shared by Borders, Yogi Berra, and Thurman Munson at 11 games apiece prior to tonight. The longest batting streak for a player of any position in postseason history, 17 games, by Hank Bauer of the Yankees in the mid and late 50s. Manuel Lee bounced out his first time up. He's now 1 for 10 in the World Series. The field down to first and no swing, says Bob Davidson. A ball and a strike. Tom Glavine is 26 years old. He'll be married on November 7th to Carrie Dobbins, a native of Atlanta. Glavine hails from Billerica, Massachusetts. Up and in, 2-1.
Massachusetts has 4 players represented on both sides. There are 17 states represented on this 50-man squad.
Pendleton throws Lee out.
The roster for the World Series, 25, of course, for each team. 17 states represented, 3 foreign countries. And the state with the most players, California with 8, Texas with 5, and the Dominican Republic with 5. Jamaica has 1. Puerto Rico has 3 representatives playing for either club.
So in this first ever international World Series, it truly has an international flavor. This isn't the first time that Atlanta and Toronto have competed for a big prize in the world of sports. They were the finalists to host the 1996 Olympic Games, and those games awarded to the city of Atlanta. Devon White, the batter. 2-0 the count. Matter of fact, the All Sports radio station here in Toronto has been running a promotion saying they took the Olympics from us. Let's take the World Series from them. White taking all the way on 2-0, and it's 2-1. David Cone taking in the proceedings in what he calls his family room in the Sky Dome Hotel. He says, when I come down to the clubhouse, it's like going to my basement. When I'm out on the field, it's like being in the family room.
If this series goes 6 games, David Cone will be the pitcher on Saturday evening.
And that would be back in Atlanta. White fouls it straight back. The count is full. John Smoltz will start tomorrow night in Game 5. He's hoping when he takes the mound, the series will be tied at 2 wins apiece. White to right. He doubled in that direction his last time up, but this time Justice is there, and Glavine works just his second 1-2-3 inning. We'll return to Sky Dome after this word from your local station. Sure, in both Atlanta and Toronto, we've seen some very creative signs in the stands. And we've seen some outstanding baseball in both cities as well. Jimmy Key handles the comebacker from Berryhill. 1 pitch and 1 out in the Atlanta 6th.
Gives you an idea of how quickly you have to react. Jimmy Key releasing the ball, and after he releases it, he's about 55 feet away. Reacting quickly and makes a rather easy play out of it. Every time you see a shot like that, you think of the shot that Gil McDougall hit off the forehead of Herb Score in 1956. Eventually ruined his career, and a guy that, from what I've heard, could really throw. Had a terrific left arm.
Herb Score, now a very popular broadcaster for the Cleveland Indians. Key has retired 15 in a row. And working to Mark Lemke with a count of 1 ball and 1 strike. Otis Nixon and Jeff Blauser singled consecutively to open the ball game. The Braves haven't managed anything against Key since then. 2 balls and a strike on Lemke, who was called out on strikes in the third. 1 of 5 strikeouts for Key tonight. Lemke will be followed by Otis Nixon. Devon White. 2 away. Here's Jim Cott.
Well, Sean and Tim, I think what's been impressive about watching Jimmy Key, we talked before the game, Glavine working on 3 days rest. Key didn't pitch much in September, and the question mark was he going to have good control? And he has had great command of all of his pitches. That's remarkable with as little as he's been able to work in the last month.
Kitty, when he did pitch in September, he was 5-0 in 6 starts. The Blue Jays 21-9 from September 1st to the end of the season. And Jimmy Key, their winningest pitcher. He's picking up where he left off.
And they had to be 21-9 as the Milwaukee Brewers were relentless in their pursuit in the American League East. Otis Nixon. The 1-0 pitch slapped to center. That drops in. And Nixon is 2 for 3 tonight. That's the first hit for Atlanta since Blauser singled after Nixon was picked off in the top of the first inning.
Earlier this afternoon, Pat Borders out working on his throwing with bullpen coach John Sullivan and the hitting instructor and ex-major league catcher Gene Tennis. You know, I've never seen that drill. He barehands it and works on his release. I think he's working on closing that left side and not hurrying the throw. He'll be tested here.
Well, Nixon must have a lot of thoughts running through his mind after having been picked off in the first inning. Oh, close play again. Otis froze for a moment as Key lifted the leg. And Pat Corrales steps in with some words of wisdom for Otis Nixon.
See, if that right foot of Jimmy Key goes behind the left leg, he is committed to go home. That was a borderline throw to first base. That right foot was even with the left leg. If it passes the left leg, he's got to go home. If not, he can go to first base. That's one of the keys to look off of Keys. One of Keys' keys.
Jimmy Key has such an outstanding pickoff move that Bobby Cox told us before the game tonight when he became the general manager of the Atlanta Braves and left the Toronto Blue Jays. One of the first things he did was to get a tape of Jimmy Key's pickoff move, and he gave it to the minor league pitching instructors in the Braves organization as an example of how they should teach their pitchers to work. Blauser down to third. Gruber the short way to force Nixon and end the inning. On to the bottom of the 6th in Game 4 of the World Series. The Blue Jays lead 1-0. 1-0 in Game 4 of the World Series, the second World Series game ever played outside the United States, and got off to such a great start last night, Tim. I thought the announcement that was made by the public address announcer concerning the flag issue before last night's game started diffused that whole situation. We really haven't heard a word about it since then.
It was one of the most inspirational pregame ceremonies that I have ever seen. The flag, of course, it's a big story. It was a big story before last night's game, being held upside down, a huge mistake. A mistake admitted by the Marine Corps, and they requested that they hold the Canadian flag last night while the Royal Canadian Mounted Police held the American flag. And telling you, the reaction from the crowd was just about as classy as you can get.
I think that's a great way to describe this city and the people who live here.
Absolutely.
Otis Nixon under the fly ball from Roberto Alomar. 1 out in the bottom of the 6th. The Blue Jays batting against Tom Glavine with a 1-0 lead. The only run in this ball game came in the bottom of the 3rd on a home run starting that inning by Pat Borders. Joe Carter has bounced to third and lined into a double play. Glavine working on his best string of the night now. He has set down 6 in a row. And Carter looks at ball 1 outside. He'll be followed by Dave Winfield. 2-0. As Tim mentioned, in Game 1, Tom Glavine was drafted by the Los Angeles Kings of the National Hockey League in the 4th round of the NHL draft. While he was in high school in Massachusetts, he elected to pursue a baseball career. And you can tell the interest in the World Series when the Toronto Maple Leafs last night played a game less than an hour away in Hamilton, Ontario, a regular season game against the Ottawa Senators, and only sold about 6,000 tickets. They ordinarily sell out every game. Joe Carter is aboard on a walk. Just the second, make that the 3rd thrown by Tom Glavine. And that'll bring up Dave Winfield, who drew one of the 2 other walks thrown by Glavine. That came in the 4th inning. Pendleton and Berryhill at the mound. Again, we cannot see into the bullpen from our vantage point to ascertain whether or not there is bullpen action. The managers can't see into the bullpens here either, but they do have the benefit of TV screens located in each dugout. There it is beyond Cito Gaston, and he can punch up either bullpen to see how his men are faring in his bullpen or who is warming up in the opposing team's bullpen.
That's their way of monitoring what goes on down there.
Excellent choice of words. 1 ball on Winfield. They didn't miss a trick when they put this place together.
They really didn't.
Carter at first, 1 out, bottom of the 6th, 1-0 Blue Jays. Toronto out hitting Atlanta 4-3. It's been an error-free ball game to this point.
Tell you who else didn't miss a trick. John Schuerholz of the Atlanta Braves putting this team together, nor Pat Gillick of the Toronto Blue Jays, the 2 general managers respectively of the Atlanta Braves and Toronto Blue Jays.
Glavine took a bit off that one and got it over. A ball and a strike on Winfield with Olerud on deck. Pat Gillick is certainly the architect of the Blue Jays' success, and their success considerable considering that they did not enter Major League Baseball until 1977. They've had 10 consecutive winning seasons, including 1992, the longest current winning streak of any Major League team. Pat Gillick has announced his intention to retire after the 1994 season. He'll only be 57 years old, and he wants to relax and enjoy life. Chopped to third. Pendleton gets Carter. Lemke couldn't get Winfield. Carter erased for the 2nd out of the inning, and Winfield is aboard at first with 2 down. We're at the Sky Dome in Toronto for Game 4 of the 1992 World Series. Toronto leads 2-1, and the Blue Jays lead Game 4 1-0 with 2 outs and a runner aboard in the 6th inning. The only run in this game on Pat Porter's leadoff home run in the bottom of the 3rd off Tom Glavine. Now John Olerud, who struck out swinging in the 2nd and then picked up his first hit of the World Series with a single in the 4th. And he tried to hold up, but it was much too late. 0-1 on Olerud. Glavine to first. Mark Lemke is playing in Windsor with John Olerud at the plate. He is the second baseman in name only.
I was thinking the same thing. Not only that, he's not playing Olerud to pull toward the hole with Hunter holding the runner on at first base. He's playing more towards second base. Pretty good idea that Glavine will pitch Olerud away.
He does. And it's a ball, 1-2.
The middle infielders in particular, well, they can see the signs that a catcher is flashing, so you'll see them move according to the pitch. If it's an off-speed pitch, they'll play a hitter more to pull. If it's a fastball away, they'll play him more the other way. This is a changeup here.
And bounce through the middle. Winfield around second. He'll continue toward third and get there as Nixon throws to second. So John Olerud is 2 for 3 tonight. And the Blue Jays threaten with 2 down in the 6th inning. Runners at first and third.
Here is the changeup, and it hits the mid of Damon Berryhill, but you see how Olerud waits so very well. Branch Rickey used to say a quiet bat and a good ball. 6 words. A quiet bat and a good ball, and this guy has a quiet bat and swings at good pitches. Branch Rickey would love John Olerud.
Cito Gaston says when Olerud comes back to the bench, if he says a pitch was a ball, it was a ball, even if it was called a strike by the home plate umpire. He has a tremendous eye. Candy Maldonado is bounced to short and fly to left. 1-0 Toronto. They have a chance to build on that lead here in the bottom of the 6th inning. Glavine staying away, and he missed away. 1-0 on Maldonado.
We talked about a quiet bat with Olerud. Look how active the hands are of Candy Maldonado. Most hitters have movement in the hands. They do that to trigger their swing. Olerud, very, very unusual. His hands are so still when he approaches the ball, but not Candy Maldonado.
The 1-1 pitch. Late swing and a foul ball out of play to the right. Maldonado now 0 for 5 against Glavine in this World Series, and he's 2 for 16 lifetime against the Atlanta Southpaw. Maldonado at the plate with 2 outs. Winfield at third. And Olerud at first. In the 6th inning, Tom Glavine and the Braves trailing 1-0. The 1-2 pitch. Fouled away. Maldonado, as a result of that success with runners on base, drove in 6 runs in 6 games in the League Championship Series against Oakland. And he drove in the game-winning run last night. Another 1-2 pitch on the corner. Strike 3. Well, that was one of the few times tonight a borderline pitch went the pitcher's way. Woo. On to the 7th. 1-0 Blue Jays. 7th inning with Toronto leading 1-0 in Game 4 of the World Series. Jimmy Key's fastball missed to Terry Pendleton.
John, you're right. This ball was outside, and Tommy Glavine and the Braves get a break that they will gladly accept. First time that home plate umpire Dan Morrison has wandered out of that strike zone and called a pitch a strike.
And to his credit, he's been pretty consistent all night long, and that's really all the pitchers the hitters ask for,
right,
as long as you're consistent. But that time Maldonado called out on a pitch that was not a strike. Pendleton to left field, and Maldonado has room. Todd Stottlemyre started throwing in the Toronto bullpen. Jimmy Key is cruising right along. He's only allowed 3 hits. The Braves have only had 3 base runners through 6 1/3 tonight. The Braves have combined 3 for 21 in this game, and they're now hitting 186 as a team in this World Series with only 2 extra base hits. No matter how good your pitching is, if you hit 186 through nearly 4 full games and only have 2 extra base hits, you're going to be behind in the World Series. Lonnie Smith up there with a count of 0-1 and now 0-2. Jimmy Key has been most impressive tonight. say that often about Jimmy Key, but he got the fastball by Lonnie Smith.
In last night's ball game, that remarkable catch by Devon White with Deion Sanders on at second base and Terry Pendleton on at first. Pendleton passes Sanders. He's out, and Sanders goes back to tag up. The throw to John Olerud over to Kelly Gruber, and what could have been and should have been a triple play was a double play initiated by a remarkable catch by Devon White. Some people even comparing it to Mays' catch in 1954, and Devon White, scary thing is he says, I've made better catches than that.
There's Deion Sanders, who's not in the lineup tonight for Atlanta. Justice again sends it in the direction of Devon White. This one a much more routine play. Jimmy Key works another 1-2-3 inning. It's stretch time, but they're coming to their feet anyway for Jimmy Key. Another World Series moment from Game 4 in 1969.
There's a ball hit to the outfield. Robinson playing his safe. Corona makes the dive. He's got it. Here comes Robinson in to the plate. Scores. Tie ball game.
Diving one-handed catch by Ron Swoboda of that Brooks Robinson liner of the ninth inning. Helped hold the Orioles to 1 run. It sent the game into extra innings. Mets won it in 10, 2-1. Went on to win the series over Baltimore. Kelly Gruber with a swing and a miss for strike 1. He's 0 for 2 tonight. Last time up, he bounced into a 6-4-3 double play. Glavine has been walking the tightrope in just about every inning. He's only worked 2 1-2-3 innings through the first 6.
Blue Jays have stranded runners in scoring position 4 of the 6 innings. So they have had chances to blow this game open with 2 out base hits.
1-2 now on Gruber. It's the bottom third of the order. Gruber, Borders, and Lee against Glavine. Two and two. Bobby Cox a moment ago managed to chuckle despite the situation. Breaking ball bounced foul. Still 2-2.
Situations like these, chuckles come through clenched teeth.
Kelly Gruber with some help last night from an old friend, Willie Upshaw, the former Blue Jay, who is serving as a minor league hitting instructor in the Toronto organization. Kelly said he got a couple of pointers from Upshaw before the game last night, helped him relax at the plate, and he thought it contributed to his home run. Gruber has battled all the way to a count of 3-2 for Cito Gaston. The payoff pitch to the leadoff batter is ball 4. The 4th walk thrown by Glavine. Tommy has only struck out 1 tonight, and that was rather 2 tonight, and 1 of those was on the borderline pitch last inning to Maldonado. Gruber with decent speed. He's been slowed this season by injury. And Borders at the plate. He has accounted for the only run in this game with a leadoff home run in the 3rd. Pete Smith, the right-hander, up again. Mike Stanton, the left-hander, up for the first time in the Atlanta bullpen. Ed Yost, the bullpen coach, in the middle. Borders bunts toward first, a foul ball.
Damon Berryhill 1 for 13. He did have the 3-run homer in game 1. And Pat Borders 5 for 11, and he's bunting in this situation? No way. I think he either missed a sign, or if he was sacrificing, I think it's a wrong play. I mean, here's your hottest hitter, right-hander against a left-handed pitcher. You have the hammer. It's a 1-0 ball game. I think you go for the throat in this situation. You don't play add-on baseball.
And you have the number 9 hitter on deck in the ice-cold Manuel Lee, who's just 1 for 11 in the series with his 0 for 2 tonight.
Devon White is in the hold, and he is 2 for 3 tonight. But coming into this game, he was ice-cold. 1 for 13. So he's 3 for 16, even though he is 2 for 3 tonight. But I think that the odds are better if you swing away here. And of course, you have to now with the count 0-2.
Bottom of the 7th, 1-0 Toronto. The 0-2 pitch is just inside. Glavine has been uncharacteristically wild tonight. He's walked 4 in 6 innings plus 1 batter. He averaged fewer than 3 walks per 9 innings this year. Borders back in the 3rd was his first in 1992 off a left-handed pitcher. He hit 13 during the regular season, but amazingly all of them were against right-handers. Pat Borders, the native of Lake Wales, Florida, at the plate with Kelly Gruber at first base and nobody out. Nixon was playing in left center. He has to drift to right center to make the catch. 1 out, and Gruber is back to first. Now Manuel Lee. He's 0 for 2. Has bounced to 2nd and to 3rd.
One thing Manuel Lee did this year, he cut down on his strikeouts. Last year he became the only player in Major League history to have over 100 strikeouts with no home runs.
That's not a good combination.
No. That means your on-base percentage is way down. But he did have a much better year this year than he did last year with the bat.
Struck out only 73 times and hit 3 homers and hit for a respectable average of 263. Gruber on the move. Lee taps it back to the mound. Glavine has to go to first. Gruber went sliding in the second base. Well, now his uniform matches his helmet.
Gruber on the hit and run, and all a manager can do for a hitter is try to give him a good pitch to hit. And Manuel Lee doing his imitation of Bruce Lee as he chops down on the high fastball. But really, that's all you can do is pick a pitcher who's always around the plate. Glavine has been like that, but the pitch was a little up. But Manuel Lee, on making the out, does push Gruber to second base.
So the Blue Jays have still another great chance to score as Glavine delivers to Devon White. Base hit left field. Gruber's being waved in. Gant with the throw to the plate. It is cut off. Throw to second. They have White in a rundown. The Blue Jays lead 2-0, and White is tagged out to end the inning. Gruber scores a big run on the 3rd hit of the night by Devon White.
This ball scooting through to the outfield, and Devon White shrewdly trying to go to second base, making Terry Pendleton cut the ball off.
On a home run by Pat Borders in the 3rd and a 2-out single by Devon White in the 7th that brought in Kelly Gruber. Jimmy Key has allowed only 3 hits without issuing a walk through 7. Kelly Gruber still a bit sore. You can see the scrape on his chin as he went sliding head first into home plate with the second run of the night for Toronto.
Here is the play by Ron Gant, and what Devon White does, he makes Pendleton cut the ball off. Now you might say, well, Gruber would have been safe at home anyway, but Devon White was making sure by trading an out for a run. Good base running by White.
A ball and a strike on Ron Gant. He's fly to right into center. He's the leadoff man in the 8th inning. Brian Hunter and Damon Berryhill scheduled to follow against Key. And should Key falter, Toronto is to the part of the ball game where its bullpen specializes. Dwayne Ward, ordinarily the setup man for Tom Henke, and he's warming up with David Wells in the bullpen. Gant got a piece of it. 2-2 the count. Gruber has also been bothered by a sore neck lately, and looked like that was bothering him during the break between innings. The trainer did come out onto the field. Breaking ball hammered past Gruber into the left field corner. It was not touched by any fans down there, and Ron Gant breaks an 0 for 16 with a leadoff double. The first extra base hit of the night for Atlanta, and just the third for the Braves in the World Series.
A breaking ball hammered between Gruber and the bag. Kelly way off the bag, of course, with the 2-run lead. It's interesting, had they not gotten the lead to 2 runs to 2-0 with that run, Gruber probably would have been on the line and sucks that ball up.
Our report from the field is that Kelly Gruber just had the wind knocked out of him, nothing more than that. He's close to the line now with Hunter at the plate. Hunter drops down a good bunt. Everybody is safe. Gruber was along the line and very deep at third. And Hunter bunted the ball past Jimmy Key so that he had no chance at it. Now the tying run is at first base with nobody out.
You have an idea of where Kelly Gruber was. He was deep, as Sean said. Jimmy Key has no play. Gruber has no play. And Brian Hunter catching everybody by surprise. That is a terrific bunt by Hunter.
Jimmy Williams threw a slew of signs for Berryhill and the 2 runners. Berryhill has struck out and bounced back to the mound. Borders looking into the dugout for help. We're in the 8th inning. Toronto leads 2-0. Berryhill pops up a bunt. Borders fields it in foul ground for the first out. Well, with Berryhill struggling, they were trying to get that tying run in a scoring position, but it backfired as he popped up the bunt.
I think the key word is struggling there. As a right-handed batter, Berryhill has not done well during the series. He elects to bunt, and the problem that Bobby Cox has, he can't pinch hit for Berryhill unless you want to go to a guy like Francisco Cabrera. If it's the 9th inning, that may be what he would have done. But it's the 8th inning, and they still need defense, but more than that, they need runs. Often, or more often than not, you do not play for a tie on the road. It's hard to tell whether Berryhill was bunting for a base hit or bunting just to push Hunter to second base.
Lemke glances it off Key. Charged by Gruber. He throws to first in time to get Lemke. Gant scores from third with the first Atlanta run of the night. It's 2-1, and the tying run is in scoring position now with 2 outs as Brian Hunter moved up to second base.
And what a play by Kelly Gruber. Great reactions. Watch the ball hammered off Key's right foot, it appeared. Yep, right off the right arm. Now watch Gruber barehand the ball to make the only play he could to get Lemke by a step. Boy, that is a terrific reaction by Kelly Gruber.
As we mentioned last night, Cito Gaston thinks he might be the best defensive third baseman in all of Major League Baseball. He played well in the field all year despite his season-long hitting problems. This will mark the end of the outing for Jimmy Key. The call has already been sent out for Dwayne Ward. Key, a longtime Blue Jay and one of their most popular players, and already they're on their feet for Jimmy Key as he gets ready to depart. We'll be back in just a moment. On tape moments ago, Jimmy Key departing to a roaring ovation here at the Sky Dome. He's been a member of the Blue Jays since 1984. Bypassed as a starter in the League Championship Series. Given a start here in the World Series when Cito Gaston decided to forego a three-man rotation. Boy, did he make that look like a smart move.
And his favorite big league manager ever, Bobby Cox, now the manager of the Braves. Dwayne Ward in there. He has won the 2 games that the Blue Jays have won in this series.
The last 2 games, Ward has been the winning pitcher. Greeted by Otis Nixon. The first pitch, a fastball for a strike, with Nixon up there batting left-handed, and with a tying run at second base, the outfield is very shallow.
It's going to be very tough for Brian Hunter to score on a ball hit sharply at an outfielder. So if you're the runner at second, you have to cheat somewhere, so you have to get a better lead than you normally would.
2-1 Toronto in the 8th inning. The Braves have scored their first run of the night here in the 8th to knock Jimmy Key out. 1-1 the count on Nixon, who is 2 for 3 tonight. He came into the ball game 1 for 12 in the World Series. Dwayne Ward, a former Atlanta Brave. The 1-1 pitch, late swing by Nixon. Brian Hunter, the runner at second with 2 down. The 1-2 pitch by Ward, fouled away. In winning the last 2 games, Dwayne Ward, the first pitcher since Raleigh Eastwick in 1975 to win consecutive World Series games. Eastwick did it for the Cincinnati Reds against the Red Sox. Another 1-2 pitch, fouled away. Took a moment for many in the house to realize that Nixon got a piece of that ball.
And Brian Hunter, when that ball, when Nixon made contact with the ball, Hunter was more than halfway to third base. With 2 outs and 2 strikes, the runner at second base on contact just takes off.
(2-1) Toronto. Top of the 8th inning. That is strike 3, and it gets away from Borders. It's up onto the screen. So Nixon is safe at first on the strikeout, and Brian Hunter is moved to third. A tremendous break for the Atlanta Braves. Nixon struck out. It should have been the end of the inning, but Borders couldn't play it.
Well, earlier we went back to 1941, and we saw Mickey Owen of the Brooklyn Dodgers on a pass ball with Hendricks the batter, and that won it for the Yankees that year, and he never lived it down. Here it is 51 years later, and there is a strikeout and a ball that gets by Borders. Looked like a splitter from Ward, and now not only do you have a runner at third, but you have speed at first base in the person of Otis Nixon.
It's a strikeout for Ward. He's also charged with a wild pitch. Jeff Blauser at the plate. 1 for 3 tonight, a single back in the first inning. Nixon takes off. The pitch is a ball. Borders ignores Otis Nixon, who goes to second with a stolen base.
When you think about a pinch hitter in a situation like this, Jeff Blauser has really been struggling. Otis Nixon steals the base easily, but you have Deion Sanders on the bench, and he was 3 for 4 in last night's game.
And Sid Bream, another possibility, hitting .375 in the series.
Yep.
They do have the left-hander Wells throwing in the bullpen. That's down the line. Olerud to a knee to play it and end the inning. The Braves leave 2 men in scoring position. On to the bottom of the 8th at the Rocca Sky Dome. 2-1 Toronto. Well, as the Atlanta Braves have lost back-to-back heartbreakers in games 2 and 3, Bobby Cox has come under a lot of criticism and second-guessing, and he's going to have to answer that question you raised after this one, Tim, about the lack of a pinch hitter for Jeff Blauser.
Against one of the toughest right-handed pitchers in the American League, Dwayne Ward.
Roberto Alomar begins the Toronto 8th. Blue Jays leading 2-1. Alomar, Carter, and Winfield coming up against Glavine, who's gone all the way.
You might say that, well, if you send up Sid Bream or Deion Sanders, then you're going to have David Wells in the game. Well, you're going to have a left-handed pitcher in there against whom left-handed hitters have hit .293 against, and you get Ward out of the game. I mean, he's your primary setup guy. I mean, would you trade David Wells for Dwayne Ward? I think any manager would say yes, especially with Jeff Blauser 4 for 34 in postseason play. I tell you, I don't see how he could not use a pinch hitter in that situation.
Deion Sanders still on the bench. Bream bypassed as well. They would have been the most logical pinch hitting candidates. Alomar threw the bat at the ball. He lifts a lazy fly to right. 1 out in the 8th inning. At the conclusion of tonight's game, Tim and I will select the Chevrolet Most Valuable Player of the game. Chevrolet will donate $1,000 in the player's name to the Special Olympics. Sid Bream still relegated to the role of spectator as well.
I think you'd go after a guy like Sanders with the tying run on third base, because Sanders can beat out an infield hit. That's another advantage you have with a guy who can run like Deion Sanders. You have the tying run on third base. I think you give yourself every opportunity. Of course, Sanders hadn't faced a left-handed pitcher in a long time. If he makes contact in the infield, those high chopper varieties, it's a tie ball game. I mean, I think there are a lot of ways to go, but Jeff Blauser against Dwayne Ward is the worst of those ways.
Particularly with Blauser 4 for his last 34.
Yeah.
Swing and a miss by Carter. 1-2 on the Toronto right fielder. He's batting with 1 out in the 8th. The Blue Jays lead 2-1 as they try to take a 3-1 lead in the World Series. Wayne Ward got them out of the problem in the 8th. Carter lines one to short. Blauser caught it. The Braves do have the heart of their order coming up in the top of the 9th. Batters 3, 4, and 5. Terry Pendleton, Lonnie Smith, and David Justice. Here's Dave Winfield, 0 for 2 with a walk. To short again. Blauser throws him out. Glavine works a 1-2-3-8. We go to the 9th. Pendleton, Smith, and Justice coming up for Atlanta. The Blue Jays lead 2-1.
Hinkie with 1 save in this series. In postseason play, he's 2-0 with 3 saves. He had 34 on the season. Dwayne Ward, whom he replaced, had 12. So 46 saves but between the Hinkie-Ward tandem this season for the Blue Jays.
Hinkie on to protect a 1-run lead in the 9th inning. Facing batters 3, 4, and 5 for Atlanta. Pendleton, Smith, and Justice. Terry Pendleton 0 for 3 tonight. He's 3 for 15 in the World Series. The Blue Jays are guarding each line. And Hinkie's first pitch is a fork ball for ball 1.
Terry Pendleton seeking some revenge. You may remember Sunday night's game after Deion Sanders in that terrific at bat had walked. Terry Pendleton made the last out against Tom Henke with the tying run on second base.
Pendleton taking all the way on 2-0. It's 2-1. Fastball fouled out of play. Now it's 2-2. In winning games 2 and 3, the Blue Jays made World Series history. It was the first time in World Series play that a team has come back to win 2 consecutive games in which they trailed in the 8th inning or later. Now the Braves trying to turn the tables on the Blue Jays tonight. The 2-2 pitch. He struck him out.
The splitter on the 2-2 count. That ball, the bottom falling out of it. And Terry Pendleton, who normally is tough to strike out, goes down the hands of a Henke sinker. That split finger fastball.
Lonnie Smith. Ball 1 just missed. Smith is 0 for 3 with the strikeout by Pendleton. Batters 3, 4, and 5 in the Atlanta lineup tonight. A combined 0 for 10. Not a good looking swing. He tried to check it but couldn't.
I think Lonnie tried to lure Henke into thinking that he was going to take a strike. He took a very close pitch and now goes after a ball in the dirt.
1 out and the base is empty in the top of the 9th. Toronto leads 2-1. The 1-1 to Smith. Bounce foul, and now it's 1-2. The 1-2 pitch. Bounce back to the mound. Henke stumbled a bit, but threw him out. Two down in the 9th.
Henke falls to the first base side, recovers, and throws out Smith.
And the slide did not help to speed Lonnie Smith up on his trip toward first base. The Braves down to their final out in game 4. David Justice is 0 for 3. Ball 1 low and away. They do have the shift on this time for Justice.
And the outfield very, very deep to protect against the double. Joe Carter in right field near the track.
Justice with a high fly ball, not very deep. Maldonado is there. The Blue Jays win, and they lead the World Series 3-1. Tom Henke saves it for Jimmy Key as the Blue Jays win game 4 by a final score of 2-1. We'll be back to Sky Dome with Pat O'Brien and Jim Cott in just a moment.
Pat O'Brien back at Skydome, where they are getting used to celebrating. Toronto is now 1 game away from winning the 1992 World Series, and obviously the first World Series for a Canadian team and for this franchise, which has been frustrated for so very, very long. Let's go down in the field now to Jim Kaat. Jim?
All right, thanks a lot, Pat. A couple of heroes in tonight's game, and one will join us later, Jimmy Key, the winning pitcher. But Pat Borders, a phenomenal off-season hitting, or rather postseason, and also an outstanding job of catching. First, let's talk hitting. You look like your swing is a little shorter and more compact, is it?
Yeah, I haven't been trying to hit the long ball. I'm just trying to get a couple hits so maybe we can score some runs. And, you know, this one here happened to be a changeup up in the zone, and didn't get real good wood on it, but it kind of scraped the back of the wall getting out of here.
Larry Heisel, your hitting coach, says you are more selective now, and that seems to be a bit of improvement also.
I think that's due to I'm just trying to hit the ball instead of trying to hit home runs and do a little power hit, and just trying to hit the ball up the middle and stay on it, and it's giving me a better look at the ball.
Talk about Jimmy Key's performance after not pitching much or at all really in postseason as a starter. He was sharp as if he'd been out there every 4 or 5 days.
Well, the last 5-6 starts he's had, he's thrown the ball real well. He's had great control, and today he had that same great control. He threw one game in Oakland, at Oakland, during the playoffs there, and he threw the ball with great control there. When he's got his control, he's a real tough pitcher. He's similar to Glavine.
All right, let's talk about your big moment, and we're going to get a look at it right here, the home run. You said this was a changeup?
Yeah, it was a changeup in the middle of the plate. I didn't know if I got enough of it, but like I said, it scraped the back of the wall.
All right, Pat, congratulations on a great night. Another one of tonight's heroes, Devon White, not only tonight, but last night. And Devon, first of all, the feeling after getting the RBI that knocked in run number 2.
Well, it's a great feeling. You know, we needed that insurance run, and it's proven to be a good one.
Last night, I think your play turned the series around, that catch, and yet you said that might not have been one of your best catches.
Well, you know, in the World Series, it's got to be my best catch, but I've been making plays like that throughout my career, but that one is just pretty much magnifying.
Well, it's a special one. It helped the Blue Jays. Let's go back to Pat O'Brien.
Is noted that another catcher is the hero of this ball game, and aptly named with Canada and the United States, Pat Borders. We'll be back in a moment from Skydome. The celebration continues. Those of you who keep track of these things, and we know a lot of you do, this was the fastest game in World Series history in the last 7 years. 2 hours and 21 minutes, and at that rate, maybe even Sean O'Brien saw the game tonight. The Blue Jays win 2-1. The Chevrolet player of the game is Jimmy Key of the Toronto Blue Jays. Chevrolet will donate $1,000 in his behalf, American, to the Special Olympics. Let's go down to Kitty Kaat.
All right, Pat, the 2 quick-working lefties. In fact, the pitching in this series has been fantastic. Steve Avery and Tom Glavine, remarkable pitching in a losing effort. Why? Because of Guzman last night, and tonight Jimmy Key. And coming off 16 days of rest and having that kind of control, how did you stay sharp with all that rest?
Well, I just tried when I was through on the side during the playoffs and during this World Series. I tried to really be focused in what I was doing, and because I knew I possibly would get a chance, and I wanted to be on my best, and it paid off tonight. I had the ball where I wanted to after the first inning. I got very fortunate in the first inning. I felt they hit a couple balls hard. We caught them, and then after that, I started getting the balls in the zones I wanted them, and when I do that, I usually pitch very well, and things rolled along pretty smoothly for me.
Great reception coming off here from this crowd. You've been a favorite here a long time. That feeling walking off the mound.
It's probably the best feeling I've ever had here. You know, I pitched in the All-Star game here last year, but to pitch like this in a World Series in front of the home crowd, it's been a great career for me here, and we'll see if I'm back next year, but I really enjoyed tonight. I had a lot of fun with it.
Jimmy Key, tonight's winning pitcher. Let's go back to Pat O'Brien.
All right, Kitty, and speaking of pitchers, of course, it's not over until it's over, the old cliche, but the Braves must now beat Jack Morris, David Cone, and Juan Guzman to win this thing. We'll be back in a moment. Stay with us. And once again, the final score of Game 4, Toronto 2 and Atlanta 1, and so Toronto takes a commanding 3-1 lead. The Blue Jays are 1 win away from a world championship, and we'll have Game 5 for you tomorrow night beginning at 8 o'clock Eastern time here on CBS.
CBS Sports coverage of Game 4 of the 1992 World Series is brought to you by Sprint, not just another phone company. A River Runs Through It, a new film from Columbia Pictures. and by Mr. Goodwrench, the GM expert at participating GM dealerships.
You've been watching the 1992 World Series here on CBS Sports. Perhaps this says it all for Toronto. Tough, hard work gets the job done. One more big night at the office. They are the world champs. We'll see you all tomorrow night, everybody.